Welcome to Forging in Ancient Rome by Owen Meeker. What is blacksmithing? Blacksmithing is when you create an object from wrought iron or steel, typically by heating up to a high temperature and then banging it out with a hammer. Blacksmithing emerged in Rome around 900 BC, allowing them to create better tools and weapons to serve themselves. Blacksmithing is a process still used today, with techniques that we learned then. Romans created many different tools and weapons to help them. Swords had three main types: short, medium, and long, called pugio, gladius, and patha. Swords were often unique, and they brought a sense of pride to the battlefield when you wielded one. They had different patterns, which were created by a different method of forging, which I'll get into later. Spears also had three types: hasta, javelin, and pilum. Hasta was a thrusting spear, while javelin was a throwing spear. But the pilum was special because it had an iron shank on the end that fell off when you stuck it into something, such as another enemy's shield or another enemy. Shields had two main types: scutum and parma. Scutum is the tall rectangular one, which specializes in group defense, while Parma is the small round shield that specializes in individual combat. Shovels and sickles were used as basic tools for farmers, but soldiers also often had to use them to clear land while on the move. Armor was initially not worn by a lot of warriors due to its lack of mobility. At most, sometimes they would wear a chest plate and a helmet. But as the technology of armor got better, more soldiers started wearing them because we could forge them better. Siege weapons such as ballista, scorpio, and tribulus all had to be forged, and the ballista and scorpio had a very very large, so it took a lot of time to make them. Tribulus were like road spikes, and they had to slow down horses and enemy troops. So how are they made? Forge welding combined smaller pieces of metal into bigger pieces, which required less heating. Because if you were to heat a large piece of metal, it requires more heat than a bunch of small pieces. Now, by combining these new metals, they're able to create alloys that were stronger, and this was due to the diffusion welding process, which is heating the entire metal and pressing it against another metal to join them together. Now, pattern welding is when you combine metals to create a pattern. This is the method that is used in swords to give them unique patterns. So this is done by pressing two plates together and then twisting them a lot, as you can see in the picture. And then after they're twisted, they're clamped together and pounded out to form a sword shape. So how is welding different from today? The biggest difference from welding in Rome and welding today is just the technology used. Modern welding uses a high heat source over a low surface area, and that's what you can see in that picture, and that's what you see in most auto shops and TV shows. A filler metal is used to prevent the metal from splitting apart, which is the typical wire that had the wire used to solder things together. The technology improved is one of the biggest technologies that have improved are the heat source, because Romans couldn't use such a high heat source with their technology. Now we can do it by sticking it inside of a small oven, and it'll get the metal up to the exact temperature it needs to be. The quality of metals and equipment has also increased, such as the hammers we use, or even the welders that we use, as I said before. And then soldering is another important thing. It's like welding, but on a smaller scale with electronics. If we didn't have the technology that we did from welding that we got from Rome, then we wouldn't be able to make the electronics that we have today. So Vulcan was the Roman god of fire in the forge. He was based off the Greek counterpart Hephaestus, who was more centered around the forge. However, Vulcan was more centered around fire, as you can see in the two depictions of him that I included. Often, Romans prayed to him to prevent fires from ravaging their towns and cities. He used this fire to create weapons and armor for the gods, and so he is often depicted with a hammer or anvil. Thank you.